is Gloria Madrano on Heart of the City, San Diego, and the Gloria Madrano podcast. And I'm live. So I am coming on. And as you know, we've been on the topic of grief, like grief during the holidays and stuff, right? And I normally speak about grief during the holidays because if you haven't noticed yet, the world is pretty crazy during the holidays, and um, you may be facing some grief, but you may notice that there are so many other people that are, their emotions are on another level right now. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of cool things going on. I love Christmas. I grieve as well, but I love Christmas. I love going to see the lights. I love all the decorations. And, um, at the moment, my favorite place to be is in London during Christmas time. But this year I will not be there. And the reason being is because my daughter, who lives in London, all my kids grew up in London. Long story, backstory. You guys know the story. So basically, she got engaged and she's getting married to a lovely man who I absolutely adore. I adore him. I like all my kids' spouses. I really do. They married some really amazing people. But this is the one. She's the last one to be married, and it is very, very special. It's very. I mean, they're all. It was all of them were special, but she's the last one. And so basically, the reason why I'm not in London is because your girl needs to prepare for a big wedding, and don't want to put out too much money to, be over there traveling and things like that. So, um, I am here today, and our topic is grief. And you know that I'm Gloria Madrano. I come here every week at 8 p.m. So hi, I see you there. And if you're listening on the podcast, the Gloria Madrano podcast is where you will find that. And I also have a couple of other podcasts. So I have a nonprofit charity where I interview people. And I interview people from, all over San Diego, all business people and, people wanting to tell their story, and it's community work, And so basically I just interview them and get their story out. And that is Heart of the City, San Diego. So you'll find that if you want to go and check that out, you'll see the podcast on Heart of the City, San Diego. And you'll find all the people that I've interviewed throughout the years there. And then, there's there's the Gloria Madrano podcast, which is what I'm doing today. And Gloria Madrano TV, which is what you're on right now, saying hi to me on. And most of my work is a live broadcast. So I broadcast live from San Diego. And that is just the way that I have always done it and have learned to do it. And so I just love to go, full force on a live broadcast. Okay. I like to just chat it up and, and, let whatever flow. I want to keep, the reason why I don't do it on video is because I get momentum from the viewers. So I gain a lot of momentum, and I get excited, and I get fueled by the viewers that pop in, right? That say hello and things like that. So if you're on the podcast and you're listening on the audios and you hear me saying hello, it's because I'm live and I'm saying hello to the people that are viewing in on my YouTube. Okay. So here's the um, question today. And today's question is number 7. And it is, why do I feel affected by the death of someone I did not personally know? You ever felt that? And this happens like when you see, we're all over social media, right? And you see like, hi, I see you. I can see you. Um, you hear of like your favorite music artist, right? So I just turned 61 and there were so many music artists that I loved, right? So that I listened to back in the day. And, I'm a former motocross athlete. And so, yeah, like, Ozzy Osbourne was definitely one of those people. Okay. And when I got the news all over social media that Ozzy Osbourne has finally, crossed over to the other side. I cried. Did you cry? Oh my gosh, right? Have you ever cried, because you heard that, some celebrity died, your favorite movie star, especially music artists, because, music is very emotional, right? You get really, culturally tied up in your favorite music artist. And so the other thing is, I work where I work, in the profession that I'm in as a chaplain, I deal with people that are, that's they're terminally ill, right? So, there are a lot of people that I don't really know them personally. And I may be called in to go and pray for them or, sit with them and talk with them, and sometimes in those conversations, we get to know, people very well. They're sharing their life stories sometimes. And, I've sat with many different people. Like I'm imagining the people that I have sat with as I'm talking to you, their faces are flashing through my mind. It's kind of choking me up a little bit. Some of them that I just remember laughing and smiling with them, and others who were very intelligent and they would share like all these really intelligent things about history and war and the amazing things that they traveled, places that they went, in dangerous places, and and they weren't even in the military. And then they were like advising me, you should try it, you should live it up and go do something, meaningful and purposeful, as though I don't right now, because I do things that are meaningful and purposeful. And so I tried to tell him, and these are like one of the gentlemen, he was about, nearing almost 100 years old. He was 99, I think. And he didn't make it to his 100th year. But I went to go and see him, and we had a laugh and, lots of little bit of a tear and, big conversations. And, he told me to go and that I should go do things like that. And I said, I do. And so yeah, you may be feeling those things. You may be feeling that, right? You may be feeling that. So sometimes, like during the holidays, you might be like, with family or whatever, and they may say, "Oh, did you hear about Uncle so and so that you haven't seen in a zillion years, and you didn't even think about him until then? Did you know he died?" And you're just like, "Ah," and your heart is just like, hurts, and you're like, I didn't, and you remember all the favorite things that you've talked about with him, with them, or whoever that is. But you weren't really close. You didn't see them all the time, but you're really affected by the news, right? So sometimes we go through things like that. And this is what this section is about, that, that we may feel things somebody may say, hey, oh, or like an old high school friend, right? I had news of sometimes I get news of old high school friends who, oh yeah, no, they're no longer here on earth anymore. Sorry, they're not here. And I'm like, oh man, we had a high school reunion. I was looking forward to seeing them, right? And you feel it. You feel the loss. You feel like, oh, if only I called them, if only I, sent that email, if only I this and that, right? And so, I want you to think about those things. Think about those things. Uh, you know, um, as I'm getting older, I think, I'm not going to wait to make that phone call anymore. I'm not going to, wait to take that, family member out to dinner that they might be getting, really, really aged now. They're getting nearer and nearer to, not living anymore. And so, you think about that, you think about, I'm going to spend that time with them. I want to hear their stories. And so I would say find things that, you know, have some prompting questions to ask, right? Such as like, tell me about, start with words like, tell me about your childhood, or tell me about what you were feeling like when you went to that, sock hop dance. My mom was the best dancer and like, in her whole group of friends and stuff, right? So she was the one, at every family party, she's the one dancing, she knows like the dance, like the proper move to the dance. I used to just dance. I didn't know any proper, dance move per se, but she did. So, you know, she she would go to the school dances and stuff, and she would know how to do whatever that dance was. She like there's this song called The Locomotion, and she knows how to do the locomotion dance, and so, or the pony hop and whatever other names. So you might be, thinking about those things, and you could ask those questions when you're spending time with those family members. Tell me what that felt like. How, what made you learn that dance, or what made you excited about knowing it, and things like that, right? My mom will go on and on and on, you know, with the story behind that story and the next story and the next story. I'm like, my goodness, you really like talking about that. Um, and so, you know, uh, this is the story of, how can we um, listen to others, but also like, because we're also on the topic of how to care, right? To be being a caring person, learning to be more caring, right? And this helps like in business and in all sorts of things in life, the way how we spend time with our, people at work, how we spend time, building the business, how we spend time, at church or being a church leader, um, and I've been around church leaders that they did not even know how to care at all for people. They had not a clue. And that was a eye opener, a shock to my system. Um, and so, I spent years learning what the needs were for people. How do I care for people? And that is just basically being in proximity to people and having your ears and heart open. Listen to them. Listen to what they're telling you, actually telling you. Sometimes you're listening and they're not actually saying, you know, what they want to say. They're just saying some things, but you know that there's something that they're struggling with. You know that, you hear that place in a sentence where they're gonna cry, they're gonna choke up, and then they hold it in. You know that, and so, you can see things in people if you listen. And you could also ask, "How can I help?" "What is it that I can do?" Those types of questions as well. But before I go further, I wanna pray for you guys because, um, Christmas can be Christmas can be difficult for people, it's a very emotional time. It's emotional, like, happy emotions, and then you're, like, on a roller coaster because you get that hit of, happiness hormones hit you, and you're on this high, and then you come crashing down after you leave that situation. You go home, and you're by yourself, and you have this crash of emotions, right? And so just be aware of that. Be aware that it's it happens not just to you, but to a lot of people. So, and that your emotions are going up and down, up and down. So it's I don't want to say it's normal, um, you know, but I want to say that you're not the only one. Okay. So, Father Jesus, I just pray for all those who are listening in right now. I just pray for your peace that surpasses all understanding. And I pray that people will know of you and accept you, that people will come close to you, that will want to get to know you through the Bible. I pray, Lord, that people listening in will feel loved in this moment. In Jesus' name, Amen. So, I want to read kind of the whole thing that's here in this little topic of grief that I'm bringing to you today. And it says this. So the question again is, why do I feel affected by the death of someone I did not personally know, like such as a music artist or something like that, right? So sometimes we're surprised, by our emotional response to the death of someone who was not even actually in our lives, right? And this can be a normal reaction for any person. So perhaps, the person was a member of of our community, right? Um, or like a favorite teacher or somebody like that, that you just like really liked a lot, right? Um, and or um, a key person in our culture, you know, and this loss can feel relatable or close to us. Sometimes we can talk to somebody and you're like, well, man, I could totally relate to that, right? So sometimes when a celebrity or famous person has died, we mourn them because their work and their life inspired us, and their presence has touched our lives, right? So, such as like the music artist that I was telling you about, um, that when he died and we got the news all over social media, it was like it was a big impact to us because he was the star of heavy metal, right? um and back when I was growing up and riding motorcycles and motocross and things, you most people were listening to heavy metal, and and all those music artists from that day. But these guys are now aged, and they their health wasn't good and things. And so there's a lot of people from my generation that they're no longer with us. Some of my favorite music artists that I knew of back in the day. And that's a whole, like, era and time that even though, like, I'm not in all that stuff anymore, I don't do the same thing that I did back in the day when I was, a youngster, a young adult. Um, but it is an era that is kind of dying away. And, we're entering into a whole nother era and time. And it's funny to see, like, the younger generation, like, try to bring back the 70s styles, or, like, you know, and music as well, and the cars and all the things, if you're into the car culture. Um, but and it's fun to be in and around, and it's very interesting that, that was an awesome era in time, kind of like the analog, time where there was no, like, we didn't have the digital stuff in our cars and stuff, and so it's very interesting. Um, so sometimes that culture change is, you're kind of mourning that loss. I am. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Like, I feel the loss of that. Um, and if you think about it, I don't know if you've ever thought about it or not, you may be feeling the same thing. You may be thinking, wow, that really kind of is affecting me. Um, there's so many things on social media. So sometimes I do take a break from the social media, stay off of it for a little while. Um, I only last for, like, maybe at the most, I think I lasted a month. So I just heard someone say they were off social media for a year. I'm like, oh yeah, nope. um, but I when I am off of the social media, you can feel the difference. You feel rested. You feel happy. You're not bombarded by all this horrible news that you weren't turning on the news, like you can go to the TV, and you make the time at this time, whatever channel news is going to be on at this time. So you plan to be there and turn on the TV at that time. I don't have a TV. I don't watch TV because I'm doing way too much. But hi, what's good? But you know, but not on social media. You get bombarded with it anyway. You weren't even asking for it. Just like suddenly it just pops up and you're like, oh wow, I didn't need to know that right now. That's like, I wasn't prepared for that. And so, you know, it's a lot coming out at you. There might be, like, people people post, they post their family members who are they're at the the viewing, in the funeral and the viewing, and they're posting that on social media. They're posting the body on social media, and you're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that today. Wasn't expected to see your family member like that in the coffin, and, rest in peace, but yeah, I would not, um, post my family member on social media, like that in the casket. Um, but people use it as a way, to, connect together with family members and stuff, maybe in a group they should have done it in, but like this, like, it goes out to everyone and everyone sees that. Um, that wasn't expecting to see that on there. And so, I think some things need to be kind of like rated R or something on social media. I don't know. But um, I want to leave you with that thought, okay? I want to leave you with that thought. And I haven't been the best at, social media either, so I'm laughing because of that, I'm thinking about some of the things that I posted, and I'm like, "What was I thinking when I posted that?" The other day was no, yesterday, I was going through my post, and I was like, "What in the world? Why did I post that?" In the state of mind that I was in, at that time, and it tells you the story of, like, it's like a diary, but everyone doesn't need to know your diary online. It doesn't need to go to the public. But, you know, that even I have done that, and I'm a smart lady. But even I have posted things, and I look back and I'm thinking, "Why in the world did I post that?" Right? So, um, you know, or why did I say that? Why did I think that everyone should know that? know? And so, oh my gosh. Anyway, and some of the live, I back in the early days when, when Facebook first brought in the live feed. I think that was 2008. I forget when that was. But um, there goes Gloria, telling stories, talking about stuff. And I was listening to some of them, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't even listen to myself right now." But thankfully, Facebook, it has deleted, by itself, notifies everyone that, all of the old live feeds are all gone away with now. They're all deleted. Hi, I see you there. Um, so yeah. Uh, so with that said, you know, I want you to know you're not alone. And if sometimes, there's things in life that you just can't control. You can't control it. Last week, we talked about number 6 last week was, can grief become unhealthy or dangerous, And yes, it can be. Grief can be. And, that's the whole topic that I'm talking about today as well, because, you know, all the stuff that people post at you on social media, you have no control over. Like, they don't, there's no rating. You can't, there's not like a rating R on it or anything. And, somebody's family member they might be at a funeral and they're posting that, and you're just like, whoa, and, or you get news from the news media, about certain things out in the world that are happening, um, mass terrorist attacks and things, but, you know, I'm praying for you all, and, just giving you a little word of, you know, a little word of wisdom, to, be careful what you're seeing or reading on your social media, and take a break sometimes, take a break, a day, or, 2 days. A day is good, sometimes a whole day off of social media is good. You do get a break, your mind gets a break. I really do feel rested, my eyes feel rested, and, I start to, uh I'm better at, having, like, you know, coming up with, like, ideas and, um, things like that, plans for my business, and, calling that family member that I've been needing to call, and talk to them and things like that. So, those are all really important, things, staying connected to, to people that are the real people in your life, Um, and, it's funny because the other day, one of my, one of my friends, one of the people that I work around and with, I realized that they've been following me on Facebook. They've been following me on my social media. And recently I had a birthday, and so they seen that I had posted for my birthday, and they were in the thread of people, saying happy birthday. And so, I sent her a message, a reply saying, "Oh, I'm so happy I see you on here, but I get to hug you in person." And so when I seen her at work, I got to hug her in person. It was so cute, and I absolutely adored it and loved it. But some people you get to see in person and hug them in person. There was a lady from Wales who had followed me for some time, and I went to London to go help my daughter in her business. My daughter runs a tamale business that is one of the most popular, you know, businesses of tamales in London. Like literally, not even an exaggeration. The line goes for like there's thousands and thousands of people come from all over the place. Manchester, and this lady came from Wales, and to come to London, and she came to London to meet me in London, and I had never met her in person. And so it was the cutest thing ever. She comes up to the stall, and I recognized her immediately from her Facebook picture, and was able to give her a great big hug in person. But I was so like consumed with work, I couldn't stay and chat because the line. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of people in our personal work area. We were cranking out tamales like crazy, but I was able to chat with her for a second and give her a hug. And somebody that I only ever knew on Facebook, on social media. And it was the most beautiful thing to meet her in person and give her a hug. So, sometimes it's like that. You might see me, and you might know who I am, so I'm sending out hugs to all of you. And I want you to know that, you are loved. God is there with you. Okay. God sees you. He sees everything about you and knows you, and he loves you. And if you want to know how to come to God, how to know that you are, safe in his arms, or safe with knowing God and reading your Bible and things, um, ask Jesus to come into your heart. All I did was one day I just said, I didn't even know. No one ever told me any of this stuff. Nothing. I just had a feeling. That's all it happened for me with. I had this feeling, and like a butterflies in my belly kind of a feeling. And in my mind I said, God, if you're real. And then I said it out loud, and out loud I said, God, if you're real, where are you? Are you really real, God? And God made himself known to me. He made himself known that in my impression, and the impression in my mind and my whole being and body and spirit, soul, that I knew that I knew that I knew that I had an encounter with God. And I didn't know, anything about asking Jesus anything, we asked Jesus to come into our heart and all. I didn't know any of that stuff, but I knew that I was good with God at that moment. And it wasn't until a series of events took place, and I found myself in this little church, a little tiny church, way back by the border of Mexico in San Diego, a place called San Isidro, way back there, in like literally way back there in some warehouses was this little church, and they were renting out the like a storage area, like a warehouse, a little storage unit to have their their church in, and it was cold in the winter, freezing, and it was really hot in the summertime. And we had those metal chairs, those fold up metal chairs that would clank, and we had to set up and break down and set up and break down. And the pastor said, come to prayer meeting every single morning, right? And well, I was a career working girl. I was working I had a career job, and I was tired. I didn't want to go to prayer meeting at early in the morning and stuff, but I did. I did, because I was new. And I was craving for God. I was craving for God. And I was also craving for direction or discipleship, teaching. And I was just craving for it. There was revival in my heart. I was craving for it. And so, I decided, okay, I'm going to go down there. We didn't have coffee shops in San Diego back in the early 80s, 1983. There was no fancy Starbucks drive-throughs, nothing like that. We had 7-Eleven. So, and 7-Eleven, had the best coffee, better than any of those fancy coffees. That was our place to go get a coffee, 7-Eleven. So we would go to the 7-Eleven, get our gas in our car, and go and get our coffee, and I was only, 19, 20, and I was, so I was drinking this coffee that was all milk and all sugar. So I would pour in the sugar, pour in the milk, and there was a little bit of coffee. But I needed that coffee, probably maybe that sugar to wake me up. And with the ritual of that still feels so good today. Stopping at 7-Eleven, going and getting the coffee, and then going to prayer meeting at church, going to prayer and sitting in those really cold chairs, or even just getting on our knees and praying, sitting down and praying. Like I would be on my knees and praying on those cold chairs, drinking my coffee, and early in the morning, and then going on to work after that. And so I still, when I see those chairs, those type of chairs, I still remember the feeling of that, the feeling of the pull of God, the feeling of praying, the feeling of we see miracles happen. We had rumors of miracles and prayed for people. And I was telling people about God. And then, my pastor was like, showed me the scriptures, that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And that we have to know that, he is the mediator to come to that he gave his life for us. He gave his life on the cross for our sins, because he paid the price for us, right? A price that we were supposed to pay. And he paid a debt that we can never pay back. We can never pay that back. There's nothing good that we can do. We can't do good works or anything to make our way to heaven. The way to heaven is by thanking Jesus. Jesus, thank you. I believe that you did that you died and rose again on the cross for my sins. Okay. And so I learned that, and I believed that. Of course, I already believed that. And, read my Bible and studied and things. And, so even still to this day, I when I'm thinking about it and remembering those were like foundational things in my life that helped me to sustain the course of difficulty through the things that I never knew that I would be having to have to go through. So, and when that big difficulty things that came and went, when life happened, um, I was able to, keep my emotions in check. Because, the reason why we get depressed or we give up and all that is because we can't mentally take pain. Okay. Um, and it's difficult. It hurts. The mental torture, the unknown things, the wanting to take control to eliminate the pain for yourself, right? But we don't know what is happening around what is all the process around us that's happening in the other person, in you, in other people that may be affected by the thing, that you're going through, um, and all of that. We don't know those things, so we have to stay calm and believe and stay the course and stay, in a place where we respond in a manner that is careful because there is a future, there's a reputation involved. And so we have to protect that future and that reputation because we can be hindered or have setbacks or even diverted from, what God's plan. God's going to keep us in the plan no matter what we go through. He's going to keep us in the plan, but we can have these major setbacks that were unnecessary. Okay. And a lot more pain that was unnecessary. Okay. And some things that are affecting us needs to stay private. Okay. And shared with people who know how to handle your stuff. Okay. Because not everyone knows how to handle the stuff. Okay. And when they hear it, it can cause them to be hurt or stumble or, things like that. And sometimes we even get so much mentally in pain that we even try to manipulate the process in the way we want to see it happen. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let God vindicate you. Okay. Because we can all see, even when I do it, my kids will call me out on it. Okay. They're like, don't do that. Don't do that. I can see, I know exactly what you're doing. Don't do that. Okay. We know what you're doing. and so, I have to be like, oh, that's a hard call. And I have to be like, yeah, I did do that. My bad. Just be like, when somebody calls you out on your stuff, just be like, oh, my bad. Yep, my bad. You don't have to say anything else. You don't have to, go on about, why you did this, why you don't have to say, oh, I hear that check. My bad. Yeah, that's all I say. That's all I do. I'm just like, oop, my bad. Let me just stop. Okay. So, um, I've been there. I've tried to do all of the explaining and none of that works. So don't do that. Okay. Um, unless somebody wants to sit down with you and talk it out with you and talk it over, then you can say your side, your piece, but if that's not happening, don't do that. Don't do that. Because you're not going to change anyone. You're not going to change the course of what's happening. You're not going to make them go realize, you're not going to make them go, oh yeah, I'm a terrible person and, I should change. They're not going to do that. Um, they have to come to that realization themselves. They have to hit rock bottom, just like we all had to hit rock bottom. They have to live out the course of their decisions. And sometimes the course of those decisions affect us personally. And it hurts real bad, real bad. Okay. Real bad, and sometimes you want to just retaliate and knock somebody out. You want to knock some sense into some people, like your kids, but you can't do that, you know. I've had some hard conversations, but because they wanted to talk it out with me, so I had that open door for that to happen. But had there not been an open door, I wouldn't be able to do anything at all. So even sometimes my hands are tied with other family members. My hands are tied. Nothing I can do about it. Whatever the decisions that they're making, they will have to live out that. It will affect me. It hurts. It hurts really, really bad. But unless somebody wants to talk it out with you, that's it. Sometimes that's not going to happen. And again, another thing that I shared with you last week was, sometimes in life, no one's going to come for you. Okay. That's a hard truth. Hard truth. Sometimes in life, no one's going to be knocking at your door. They're not going to come for you to rescue you. They may not come for you to even pray for you. They may not be there for you. You may be alone. And you have to take care of yourself. You have to get yourself up, get yourself dressed, and take care of yourself. You have to give your mind trips over to the Lord and believe his word, that if he says he's going to vindicate you, he's going to vindicate you. Okay. There can be another story. There can be another story, and it could be a good story. Okay. But if our hearts are filled with retaliation, manipulation, and all of that craziness that is bombarding us in our head, we will not have another story. We won't. Okay. Because our hearts will be filled with all kinds of yucky stuff. So let God soften your heart. Let yourself be pliable. Okay. So, on another, podcast, I was sharing, be like water. Some people want to be locked in. But actually, that's a cool statement, right? I want to be locked in. I like that statement too. I want to be locked in. I want to be with the cool people. But in all actuality, it's like, be like water. Be like water. Be pliable, be flexible, and flow like water. Because life is unpredictable. You cannot predict it. And if you're locked in, you cannot, adjust to what is coming your way or to what is happening to you. You have to be able to adjust to all the circumstances. Okay. And that's flow. That's like, be like water. Okay. So with that said, it's wiser to be like water. It's cool to be locked in. I get it. Yeah, I like it too. Be locked in. I like it. It's cool, and it's trendy and it's out there. But if you're old and wise like me, it's going to be more, be like water. Okay. All right. See you later. I love you guys. I got to get to work. I got to get going because I still work a regular job. Your girl is, hey, I got a podcast. I got a YouTube channel. I got a nonprofit, a charity organization, but I still work a regular job. Why? Because I like to go to work. I like my job. I like going and being there for the people that I work for, I like going in there and, there's a big need in the community that I work for. I might not be the hired on chaplain at the job, but I'm an active chaplain for the people that I work for in that community. Okay. And I'm available as that, as I'm working, but I may not be the hired one, but I am that 24/7 anyway, because that is what I am. Okay. Well, that said, I love you and peace out. Bye, guys. See you later. See you next week.